You guys, I lied about being back. 3 weeks ago, I was like, I'm back. I'm coming back. And yet here we are, 3 weeks later, and I haven't dropped another episode because life is crazy and it's crazy busy work and it's crazy busy my family, and my personal life. And honestly just haven't made the time. And I'm okay with that. And I do feel bad because a lot of people have asked me, like a lot more than I thought, have asked me when, and if I'm still doing the podcast. And I was like, oh, yeah, I mean, I am, but I just haven't. So I really need to make a point on Fridays, because I have more time on Fridays to do it. I'm not gonna lie too, I've been in kind of like a mopey headspace. I turn 40 on Tuesday of next week, and I'm feeling kind of blah about it. I thought I would be really excited, and I kind of am. But I'm feeling kind of blah, like, oh my God, I'm gonna be 40. I didn't think this day would actually come. It'll be a lot easier to remember my age. Most times I can't, but maybe I'll just forever be 39. That'd be all right. But um they say 40 is really fun, so I'm excited for that. Just also makes me feel really old that I've been doing this for a long time. And maybe I need to do some more things. Some people know what those are. I just haven't committed to them, and that's okay. Like I always say, maybe one day I will grow up and be a big girl and finally finish my director's license. So, with that, I've honestly had a lot of really awesome questions the last 3 weeks, like crazy good questions. The due process group has been good. We had an awesome discussion yesterday, and if you're not familiar, you can always find me on Wednesdays in my due process support group. If you need the email link to join us, it's Google Meets, super slick, easy. Join us if you want. Some weeks I'm there, some weeks I'm not. This week was a good one. It's always nice to see new people, old friends, all the things, and answer different questions, talk about different topics. Um, so yeah, lots of different things. Just most recently, a lot around restrictive procedures. That's been a big one lately, which is crazy to me because it is October, but also is the climate that we're living in these days, unfortunately. So lots of questions around restricted procedures. The biggest one that I have come across, and I actually think is super, super interesting because it's not something that I typically have done in my practice, is sending home those restricted procedure forms from SPED forms. So I have never done that in my 16 years, right? And I did center race and I did EBD resource, and I never sent those homes to families. That just wasn't the practice of my district. And in my other districts where I was assistant director and coordinators, I have not done that either. So this is new to me. Not a bad thing, right? Probably should be doing it. Found out after looking through statute, of course, that we do have to send them home if parents request them or ask for them. It's their right. Absolutely. Totally get that. Um, but a lot of districts are just doing it. So it brought up another big question, right? One being in the statute that you have to inform parents within 24 hours. That is a huge thing. A lot of times we have teachers who are like, oh, I'll call later, oh, I'll email later. A phone call is best, right? Talking to the family is the best practice. Maybe even seeing them in person if they're picking up. Email is probably last resort because nobody wants to hear about that as from an email. Talking from a parent perspective for sure there. As an administrator too, I would say, don't love that. But informing the family within 24 hours. The other piece to that is like obviously filling out the form on SPED forms, the restricted procedure form within that 24 hours as well, because it's fresh in your mind. And then having an administrator review that restricted procedure form, especially if we're going to send it home to families or families are going to request that. Because a big thing that I've seen in them is a lot of biased statements or statements that are over personalized, over feeling. lots of feelings in them, like I was so upset. He really hurt someone, so and so. And so really making sure that those forms are filled out professionally and without bias. So having an administrator look at that is a really great thing before you finalize it and quite possibly send it home. So the other big piece is the debriefing form that needs to happen within 2 days. So you need to do that staff debriefing form that also needs to get finalized in the history. I highly recommend having a school psych, a principal, coordinator, whoever be that person who facilitates and helps you fill that form out. Again, because having somebody that wasn't there is really important because they can kind of give that different perspective when you're filling the form out about what you could do next time or what the best practice could be. The other bigger question that has come into play from that is PBSPs and FBAs, which was a question that I had yesterday. I wouldn't even say it was a question, it was situational that I had to follow up on. So you can write a PBSP without an FBA. I'm not going to tell you that that's a great idea because more than likely you need that data from the FBA to write the quality PBSP. There are emergency situations when you're really needing to have something in place for a student, probably while you're doing the FBA, but you should always best practice make sure that you're completing that FBA along with the PBSP. You can do them as a standalone now, super slick, super easy. And if you have all the data, it's really not going to take you that long. So thinking about that, I know it says 30 school days because it's just like an evaluation, but really keeping in mind that you don't have to take the 30 days, right? If you have the data collected already and you just need to send the forms home and do the observations and maybe kick a bask out, that's not going to take you 30 days. You could probably complete that FBA pretty quality, right? With the information that you have. If you have no information and you don't have anywhere to start from, yeah, it's probably going to take you longer. And so that's all right. But ensuring that you have that FBA to back up that PBSP. That was another big one that came up. Another big thing that has been kind of the talk of the town, we'll call it, is SPED social work and billing for MH SPED. So this year, there was a big push for social workers to do MH SPED. So they could do mental health and we could MA bill for that. So we call it third party billing, MA billing here in Minnesota. And a lot of times you'll see that from SpeechPath, OT, school psychs do it when they're doing evaluations. And so it's basically reimbursement to the district for the services that have been given that doesn't count against the student's medical assistance, but there's a pot of money that the district can pull from for giving those services. So now mental health is under that umbrella, and school social workers can basically give mental health services, can be written in the IEP, and we can bill for that and get reimbursed as a district, which is huge because a lot of our students need mental health services. With that, it is a big undertaking for social workers compared to speech and OT in different ways, right? Speech and OT are doing high volume MA billing, right? From a large amount of kids. Because you might have a speech path that's seeing 150 kids as a related service, right? Or on their caseload, quote unquote. And they're billing for all those students. They're doing progress notes, they're doing their MA billing, they're submitting the things that need to get submitted into SPED forms. So there's a good amount of work that goes into that. MH SPED looks a little bit different because those social workers have to write a summary of recommendations, have to ensure that the student needs services, and check all the boxes that go with mental health in order to produce a care and treatment plan that would be carried out within the services in the IEP. And then they're also going to have to go in and do progress notes and all of the things and do the MA billing, which basically they click a button and on the other side of things, the billing goes out. They're not doing any billing. Huge misconception. They're entering the information. There's a backside of things that happen. They're not the person that does that. Typically, it's on the SPED forms and with an excuse me, with a third party billing person. So there's really not a billing that any of them are doing. They're just inputting their information to later have somebody bill it out. So extra steps for social workers, right? more involvement, need to be at team meetings, need to be involved in the IEP team more. But the biggest question has been coming is whether they are sitting on their own goals or they're sitting on objectives for services. Also, whether they're sitting on the service grid or they're sitting in accommodations. I sat in a meeting with DHS and they kind of went back and forth about what a lot of districts are doing. Some are still doing accommodations for social work, which is what we used to do previously, and some are saying that districts are doing in the grid. I'm going to tell you from my personal perspective, services in the grid is my own personal preference of where they should go. Because I can do a report on that in SPED forms, easy. Workload analysis. Also holds that social worker accountable for those services because they are in the grid and they are laid out and have to be given to that student. What's happening is sometimes they sit in the accommodations and it's kind of willy-nilly, right? Like, oh, I don't have time today. Maybe I will next week. And so they're not, quote unquote, what feels like held to the same accountability as they are in the grid, where it states that they have to be servicing that student. Accommodations is more like social work services provided and can be at their quote unquote leisure. I'm not saying it's leisurely. I don't think they do anything leisurely. I think they do a great job. However, I think it needs to sit in the service grid. So that's my personal preference. Again, it is district led on that. The director, executive director will make the choice of where that's going to live. Most districts that I have heard about or friends that I've talked to are putting it on the grid. Same reasons. So, on top of that, there's the goal. So, what I'm telling social workers is I think it's in their best interest, personally, to put their information and what they're going to work on in objectives because then it can be serviced by the case manager and it can be serviced by the social worker, which means when you write a progress report, you can do it together. You can collaborate, you can take your information. You are not the sole person who is responsible for that goal. And so I've explained to the groups that once you write that goal, you are the only person responsible for that, which means you're going to progress that on top of doing your progress notes for MA billing. And you're going to have to make sure that you're doing, the extra time and information that you need to give when you're writing the IEP and XYZ. It's a lot easier to collaborate with a special ed teacher and tag onto a goal if possible, right? Because most likely, if the student has a social emotional need, you're going to be able to write something under that need or that goal that pertains to social work, right? Coping skills, different things like that, behavior skills, all different kinds of things. So, in order to make their lives easier, I think objectives is the way to go. And in order to quite honestly hold everybody accountable, I think it's better to have them on the service grid. So huge changes for social workers, right? Not something that they were able to do before. They could still give services, but now for students who are MA eligible, we can get reimbursed and billed for those services, which is great, right? That benefits the district, that benefits the students, everybody wins. Because what people don't understand is that those MA dollars really give back to the district to get different things, staff, different types of equipment. I've seen buses purchased. I've seen, I think staffing can be used for that too. Like you can hire paraprofessionals, XYZ. Um, so I just think there's so many benefits from those MA dollars for districts that a lot of districts are missing out on that money, right? That's money left on the table. That's the conversation I have with a lot of directors all the time is we're always like, it's money left on the table if we just leave it out there and we're not billing for it. So I really encourage you, if you don't already, to get your social workers involved. It is a big undertaking, but I will say what I've seen is that DHS is very, very involved in helping and MDE with piloting and getting this going. And if you don't know, ask questions. I ask it all the time. I'm constantly like asking other people what their districts are doing or what that looks like for them. So huge questions with that, right? That have been coming at me lately. So those are kind of my bigger ones right now. It's always hard when I'm on the spot. I feel like I should like take callers. I should wait till Friday and be like, you can call in at this time. Maybe that's what we'll start doing. Or you can like I'll just start writing them down. I think I say that every time I'm going to write them down and then I don't write them down. The other big one that I just went through, which was really interesting that I've never heard other districts doing this, and we kind of my director that I work with, we were talking about, is the understanding that with service end dates. So services are a year minus a day, right? Your end date is always one day less than your start date. So if your start date is October 4th, 2025, your end date is October 3rd, I was going to say 4th, did you see that? 2026. We were just getting into it with someone who was saying that their district said it was a full year, so it went from October 4th to October 4th. That is not the case. It is October 4th and then minus a day. So October 3rd is when your services would end. The other big misconception that I've been talking with staff about is the 14 days on the PWN. So a lot of times staff are like, well, what happens when the parent signs the IEP? Do I have to amend it? No, you do not need to amend it. What happens if I know they're coming in and they want services to start next week? Yep, that's great. Services can start next week. So as soon as the parent signs the paperwork, services can start. Your service grid might still have 4 or 5 days left on it for the start date, but as soon as that family signs the paperwork, you technically can start services. It is literally just giving you the 14-day hold for families to get that time to think about, process, and ask questions about the paperwork. So if they sign it on day 3, awesome. Start services. That sounds great. If they don't sign it until day 14, start services on day 14. You already have it on the grid. If they don't sign it and they're already in special education, you are in implied consent and you can just start moving forward. So there's just these differences of ensuring that these families have their due process rights, because when we shorten that window for them and we say services start before they actually are technically supposed to, we are taking away from that family's due process rights, right? To have the time to look through the paperwork, to have the time to process and ask questions, and to have those conversations that they need to have. Some families aren't going to, and some are just going to say, sounds great, here you go. Some are. So we need to give them all the same quote unquote respect of that 14-day window. So your services are always 14 days from the day you send the PWN. And I talked about this with my staff all the time. Do not date the PWN for the day that you wrote it and then send it home the next day. Because what happens is you have now taken one day of that family's 14 days. Because when you don't give it on the day that it is dated, you are quote unquote backdating or you're post dating paperwork. And that again is not quite honestly legal to do with families. So if I'm sending the paper, if I do my paperwork today on October 4th, I have to send that paperwork by 4 p.m. today or whenever I leave the office, or else I need to date it for the following Monday that I come back. I can't just leave it sitting there, finalize it, not send it, and then send it on Monday. Doesn't work that way. You're going to have to you shouldn't finalize it. You're going to date it for Monday, change your 14-day start for the services, and send your paperwork out. I can't explain how important it is to get that stuff sent out, and get it sent out the day that you date it. I've seen so many paperwork, unfortunately, throughout the years where families have had things post-dated or pre-dated, and they're not getting the time that they need or the time that they honestly are awarded from that 14 days. So that's another big one. Um, I think that's about it. I feel like I go on a soapbox sometimes and I just rant, but there's so many different things. Yeah. So if you have any questions for me, let me know. You know where to find me. Drop me a comment. If you know my phone number, call me. If you want to be invited to my group, let me know. It is good. Come when you want. Again, like I said, it's super flexible. A lot of times I tell people just to come to network, to meet other people. I'll be happy to introduce you to other people. Um, it's really important in this job to network. I can't even tell you. And also for you to remember, and I have had this come up multiple times in the last 3 weeks, that this is a small community. And most likely people know you. I've had a lot of names recently come around where I'm like, wait a second, I know who that is, or wait a second, that's a great person, or wait a second, we probably shouldn't do that. So just remembering that networking is huge and super important, and also leaning on your colleagues and the people that you meet. I have a great network. I shouldn't say I have a great network. I have an amazing network that I can reach out to, and honestly call and text within like seconds, and they do the same with me. And it's so amazing because we just collectively work off each other and you just learn so much, and I love to learn. If you know me, I love to learn. Um, I also had a really, I'm going to end with this really awesome conversation with my director the other day. I think it's really easy to get stuck in the black and white of special education because we have so much statute and we have so much law that governs us and that controls what we do. But I also think it's important to remember that there's a lot of things that are open to interpretation and a lot of things that are district specific. So remembering that, yes, statute might say this, however, it is sometimes open to interpretation what that looks like. There are some things that are very cut and dry, and believe me, I stick to them. But a lot of times there's things that are situational, there's things that are student focused on or student like led, I guess you could say. I'm trying to find the words for that, or student specific, right? And some things are district specific, and remembering that it's not always the same cookie cutter mold every single place that you go. And that's what I've learned working in multiple different districts and charters and in large districts, is that some things are just based on what your district and your director wants, and some things are MDE, and there's flexibility within that, and really understanding that as an educator and learning about that and learning more, right? Like I said, the FBA PBSP thing before, right? You can do it, but it's not best practice, right? Some places might say absolutely not, and some might say maybe. So again, open to interpretation. There's nothing in the law that states that, but it is open to interpretation based on the district and the people that you work with. So really having an open mind and really learning to dig into things and ask different opinions, I think is a great thing. So I'm always here if you have questions, and I can't wait to be back. See ya.